It's a freezing cold day of the funeral. He's going to be buried up on top of a hill. They carry the casket to the top of the hill. They get to the top of the hill. It's freezing cold out. He busts through the bottom of the casket. He's rolling down the hill. He's wearing a shroud, and the shroud just pops up.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Cases Gone Wild. We have a very special guest today that I'm going to introduce you to, our first judge who's come on the show. We're very happy to have him. Cases Gone Wild is brought to you by Marko Law. Me, Jon Marko, I've been an attorney for about 20 years, and I've seen some of the craziest, most insane, just ridiculous cases gone wild that you will not believe. And today, we're going to talk to Judge Draper, a municipal court judge in Grosse Pointe, who's going to talk about some of his practice and some of the crazy cases that he's had. If you like our show, please share it. Please like us. Please leave a review. Please tell us how we're doing. Also, remember, we have video, so you can watch us live. You can watch the video of this that we dressed up nice for you today on our YouTube channel of Marko Law, or please listen wherever you go on all your Audible and other stations. I'd like to get right into it and introduce Judge Draper. Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thanks so much for your help, and thanks for having me on. It's really been an honor to sit on the bench and be elected by the city of Grosse Pointe. Love my residents, love being on the bench. And Grosse Pointe's weird. Most courts start January 1st. You know, it's like, okay, it's a fresh start. In Grosse Pointe, by ordinance, right before the election, the old judge retires, and the minute the election is done, you are judge.
You have to go right into
Let's go. It's go time.
Yeah,
so I was lucky. I had one of the local judges sat for me on the Thursday after the Tuesday, but after that, it's hit the ground running.
Well, it's an honor to have your honor
on
the show, and thank you for being here, and congratulations on your recent election to the bench.
Absolutely love it.
I'd like to introduce. So let's tell the viewers a little bit about you. You went to Lakeshore High School in St. Clair Shores.
Yeah, I'm a Shorean from the east side. Always loved Grosse Pointe and always came here for meals or to see friends and what have you. And moved here in 1990. My wife and I and moved to the farms, and now moved to the city a couple years after we were in the farms, and we've been just loving Grosse Pointe ever since.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you went to U of M for undergrad,
right? U of M grad in 1987, and love the Maize and Blue, of course. And we're having
It's a good year.
Yeah, it's a good year. Good with that. And then Indiana for law school in 1990, straight through. And I really, really enjoyed Bloomington. It's a gorgeous part of the country. A little warmer than here. People are really nice. You know, just laid back town, but really pretty. When the flowers are blooming in the spring, and it's like a real sandstone buildings. It's just a really pleasant place to learn, whatever it might be. You know, they've got really good law school, great school of music, great business school, some really great, just a tremendous campus. I love Bloomington.
And you got into the law. My understanding is you told me that you've been in the law for a long time. You started working as a runner for a law firm.
So when I was 16, so my sister Jennifer was a lawyer. She's a little bit older than me, not much. But she started and went to law school and worked in law firms. And I was looking for a summer job when I was in high school. She's like, why don't you come work at my firm? And so I was, at the time, it was before e-filing. So everything had to be hand filed. So I worked at a busy law firm starting when I was 16. Once I had a driver's license, I could go to law firms. You know, we weren't really faxing stuff. It was either sending it, and sometimes
back in the day, you had to deliver everything.
It had to be there that day. You know, everything's last minute. You know how the law is. This is the way it is. So you got to get it there that day. And, you know, people are typing and throwing it to you and like, get it to this address ASAP, which I had been a delivery boy. My dad had a lighting company. So I always drove for him or drove with him. And so I do that and then work at the law firm, and I really loved it. And what I think I learned early on is, especially delivering things to court, the judge is fine. You know, judge, good to know the judge, but the clerk. The clerk is what's up. And so once you realize that's who you need to befriend, and like that can get your schedule working, that can get stuff filed timely.
The clerks will make or break you. So
exactly. Don't make them upset.
Yeah. And it's, you know, some attorneys or some lawyers, or even their offices are rude to the clerks.
Yes.
And
So
I don't
short-sighted.
understand it. On my first motion, somebody had told me this. So on my first motion call, I found out what the clerk's like, and I showed up to court.
Yes.
And this was in Wayne County, which is the busy court. And on Fridays, there'd be hundreds of lawyers there.
It's one of the busiest courts in the nation by
And
numbers.
I would show up, and I showed up on the first day. On my first motion, it was Judge Zielkowski.
Yep.
Who's no longer with us. He
R.I.P.
passed away.
Yep.
And I showed up. I found out they liked Frappuccinos, so I showed up with a whole tray of Frappuccinos for his entire court staff.
Nice.
And all these other lawyers are looking at me like, what are you doing? And the clerk never forgot that.
They won't.
And
it's little things
it's the
like
little
that.
things.
And by the opposite, right? You could say something because you're in a rush or you were late
be
or whatever.
rude, yeah.
And they won't forget that either.
They won't forget that either. Being a court clerk is a hard job.
Oh.
The pay's crap.
Yes.
You get crapped on by just about everybody. Pushy lawyers.
Everybody's got to be in 10 places.
Yeah.
But that's what I was going to say. Like I know you have one of the busiest practices going, and there's not enough Marko to go around. So you got to be in all these courts. And it's not like Wayne County and Oakland County and Macomb go, oh, well, John's trial schedule is as follows. They issue the dates.
The judges do what they want.
They
right?
said, today's the motion, today's the status conference, whatever. So you're juggling all the time. And if you have that friend or even like at least somebody that's amenable to, your request.
Helping you. They can go talk to the judge.
Right. Like
they can make your life
he's doing
100 times easier or 100 times harder.
Exactly. However you want to play it. And it's funny. I saw that too with lawyers as I was a young guy. And I see, they'd show up with cookies or whatever. And you're like, that's cheesy. But then you're like, it's brilliant because then that guy can show up at 11:30 and no one squawks.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the date gets moved magically. And you're like, how did that happen? And you're
exactly. The little things that count.
Yeah.
So all right. So you, before you became a judge, and now we're going to talk about municipal judge. I'm going to introduce that.
Yeah.
But I understand you did some insurance defense work.
Yep.
And a lot of criminal work.
Yeah.
And some of the cases that you told me about that we're going to talk about today are crazy. There's going to be a lot of sex cases, strip clubs, sex lies, and videotape.
That's what it is.
That's
Bars
what
and
it is.
Stuff
like that.
I wish we could do have some video backup to this, and that would be an interesting one because you get, and now in all your cases you get video. Like you get video evidence. People are wearing body cams. There's dash cams, particularly in the criminal work I do.
It's a lot easier than it used to be.
Right, and on the front of businesses they've got cameras, and oftentimes inside the restaurant, bar, place of business, they've got a video cam so you can see what really happened. And a lot of times clients will come to me and say, well, this is how it went down. And I go, okay, I'll listen to them, but you have to a lot of times wait for the video. And you go, well, it's not true that the person just came up and punched you. Rather, you kicked them first or did something and then they reacted. So I have to take my clients' stories sometimes with a grain of salt. But to your earlier point, I started at a firm called Kitch downtown, did medical malpractice defense for 2 years. And that was great for the simple purpose of you get to learn how to read a medical record. And I know in your practice, it is huge.
A lot of medical.
I would just sit with a stack of medicals and you learn the shorthand and you learn what to look for. And what's GSW, gunshot wound. And you learn about a fracture and whatever. And once you could read that shorthand really quick, you can look at 100 pages and say,
way quicker.
That's the one page and you can find, I would say in almost every case, there's a diamond in the rough. There's a piece of paper there. If you're willing to order all the records, read all the records,
and do your work
and understand them. That's where those cases are won.
A lot of lawyers don't understand the medicine. We have to understand the medicine in what we do because it's not just about it's about the pain or the suffering or the hurt that was caused to my clients.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand the medicine. A lot of lawyers don't understand the medicine.
And for your clients, you need to know that 10 years ago, they had a car accident and they had a back injury, but this one's different. That was in their lower back and this one's in their neck. And with a broad brush, well, they had a pre-existing back injury. Wait a second. That one's different, right? And they healed from that and now they got a new thing. And what I found in the criminal work is learning, because I learned in a civil aspect originally and learned how to read those medical records and got experts and had an expert. And you pick any medical, area. If you use that in the criminal, you can really help yourself because most criminal lawyers did not have that training that you and I have had, I guess, with civil work and talking to doctors, hiring experts, deposing doctors. I felt like when you really get into a case, and I know you do this, if it's about a wrist injury, you almost become like an expert in that area because you hire people and you're reading treatises on it and you're cross-examining and you're hearing both sides of, well, we didn't screw up. Well, you did screw up, and you, as the lawyer, you really have to be really conversant in every area. Just, for that moment, you got to know that area.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that's very interesting. So you were just elected what's called a municipal judge.
There are 4 of us in the state of Michigan. Only 4.
It's an anomaly compared to most judges. So for our listeners who aren't in law, when you become a judge, you can't do anything else. In fact, ethically, you have to sell or give up your practice. So let's say that you own a law firm. If you become elected a judge or appointed a judge, it's over. Your career is over. But a municipal judge is this very special thing where you get to keep your law practice and you're a judge. How does that work?
It's so unusual. And now I guess it makes sense, as I was saying, where you get elected in November and then you don't take the bench till January in most cases, for most people, because they have to give up their practice. I didn't. So I cannot practice in the city of Grosse Pointe. That's verboten. But I can practice anywhere else in the state. In fact, it's assumed I will, because none of the judges, the 4 judges, the one judge does 2 of the Grosse Pointes, and that's our judge, Birschbach, does the farms and the shores, but the rest of us each have a singular Grosse Pointe.
So you're like a judge, like how many days a week are you a judge?
So it's every other Thursday, but as I've found, and I've only been doing it for a couple of months, but I found that it's a lot more than that. It's a day a week, I would say, because people will get arrested at odd hours and I have to have an arraignment. Last Friday, I was at a lunch with my parents and I get a text and a call from the clerk. Hey, can you zip over here and do an arraignment? I had to zip over and do an arraignment for a guy that got locked up. They had gone in and arrested somebody. He had
so you have to be on call as a judge, but that's great. You get to keep your practice.
Yes, that's key. Yeah, and I love it.
So what do you do? Like, what if you're like at a party and you're having some cocktails, and then they say, "Hey, we got to do an arraignment."
And it hasn't happened yet. That hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
And now the good news is, if something happened, if you were out of town, if maybe you had a cocktail or two, and you really weren't in a position to take that arraignment, to throw the robe on and come in, the other judges all cover for each other in the points. And I've been appointed to cover for them, and they've been appointed to cover for me. So if that was the case, I'm in Florida or whatever. Now with Zoom, you actually can appear remotely, I've had motions and the judges in Florida on vacation and stuff, which is, it's a different world now. It is. So today you can do that. Back in the day, pre-Zoom, you would have said, okay, Grosse Pointe Park judge, Grosse Pointe Farms judge, come visit for Draper because he's gone, or unavailable for whatever reason.
Well, thanks, Judge, for being on the show. Let's get right into some of the craziest cases because you've had kind of a diverse career and you've been doing. You've had some insane cases. So you've had, tell us about, pick one of your favorite cases gone wild to get started.
Okay, so quickly. So I started with that med mal defense. I did that for a couple years. And then I went in-house with an insurance carrier, and just did bars. Okay, bars, restaurants.
Bars are breeding grounds for cases gone wild.
There's always alcohol involved. Sometimes, it's a bar. Sometimes there's drugs involved. There's often drama over this one's dating this one, and they get in a fight over a girl. They get in a fight over, I can't tell you how many pool table fights that have led to lawsuits that I've had to defend. So I'm generally defending the bar. So I was just thinking back to a case I had in Southwest Detroit. It was a pub in Southwest Detroit. I'm defending the bar, these 2 groups of women. And it was interesting. If you saw them in the light of day, very attractive, both groups very well put together, actually well-to-do, but they got into it over some drinks over the pool table. One girl threw a pool ball at another girl.
Oh my gosh.
One girl got thrown over the pool table and claimed that she exploded her breast implants on the pool table, and that was her claim of damages, and got her weave ripped out. So and I can't remember, the weave cost $1,000 or some. I didn't know.
I didn't know that.
I should find out about this, but I don't. I'm saving money on this. But anyways, the weave gets pulled out. They can't find the weave. The one girl goes back in to find the weave after they finally break up the fight. They get the girls out of there, and bouncers will tell you, when these girls get into it, they're just every bit as dangerous as 2 big guys going at it. Sometimes the girls are tougher. They got nails, and some of them fight for to the death,
life,
you know. But so they get these girls apart.
That her breast implants exploded inside of her body?
Yeah. So she had to go get new implants. Now, of course, they had to be bigger, newer, better. So we
Right.
get her medical records. Going back to our earlier point. Now, it turns out she had gotten 3 or 4 sets, and this was the final set at that time that she wanted the insurance company to pay for. And so we hired an expert who was actually a local doctor, great plastic surgeon, and he comes into the courtroom. And we
Did
ended
this go to trial?
trying the case. We ended up trying the
went
case.
to full-blown trial.
Yes, in front of Judge Torres in Wayne Circuit, who was a fabulous judge, also no longer with us, but a really, really good guy. So the expert brings out a hammer and has
In
a
the
breast
courtroom?
implant in
In
the
the
courtroom,
courtroom?
and bang, he bangs on
And he
it
starts hammering the breast implant
show
with a
that
hammer?
it could not have burst on the
Are they that
pool
strong?
table. They're really strong. And the jury sided with us ultimately and
He's
found
literally
a
hitting
no
the
cause
breast implant with a hammer.
with a hammer to
Now,
show.
see, now that's crazy. So that's a danger zone, because
Yeah.
what if the breast implant blew up?
You don't know what's going to happen. And so, I mean, as the defense attorney, and I'm calling this witness, if that thing breaks, I'm essentially making the plaintiff's case.
You're making that. That's like the OJ glove.
Right.
The prosecution had him put on the glove.
Yeah.
Remember? And
If
it backfired.
If it fits
and it didn't
perfectly,
fit him.
and it didn't fit.
him.
Now, granted, it had been dried for years, or it'd
Yeah,
been
yeah,
dried
yeah,
for maybe
yeah,
1 or
yeah.
2 years at that time.
But that's why those live demonstrations are
moves,
dicey. But that's
dicey.
bold, but it worked.
Right, but it worked in that case, but you never know. And you
never know. See,
Yeah.
I find that bars have crazy cases.
Yes.
And I also find that a lot of shady stuff goes on at bars. And you know what? Video goes missing all the time.
Yes.
I had a case. I represented a judge's family in Royal Oak. The judge was not from Royal Oak. He was from a circuit up north.
Yep.
But he had a son who went to Royal Oak bars. Now, for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with the Royal Oak, there's a strip of bars in Royal Oak where it is like pretty wild. I mean, there's the young 20-something, 21 to 30. It's the place to go.
Right.
If you go there on a Friday or Saturday night,
You can't park.
you can't park. You're going to have a bunch of drunk kids. I used to go there when I was young, right?
It was the place.
It was the place to go.
For a certain part of time in life, right?
Yes. So I get a call from this judge's family and says, there's been a horrible incident. Our son was at a bar in Royal Oak, and he's in the hospital with a traumatic brain bleed. And he's been punched in the face by a bouncer. We don't know exactly what happened. He fractured his skull. Ooh. Now, what I find in bar cases is there's almost always, unless you have a really bad dive bar, they all have video. They have video on the outside and on the inside, not only for like security reasons, but because bar industry people steal.
Yes.
Right?
That's number one. Is it's along the bar so they can watch the people it's either at the door for the guy taking the money or at the till where they're bringing in the money for the drinks.
So there's usually video, but I find in cases the video goes missing a lot. Okay. They always say, we did not preserve the video. We're sorry. And I'd say at least half of my bar cases, now not with you and not with my buddy Rich Karen, who works for Conifer. I know you used to work for Conifer.
Yep.
Because he's an honest guy.
Yes.
But some of the less scrupulous bars, and you're at the mercy of your clients.
Right.
The video will go missing. So in this case, prominent judge was involved.
Yeah.
Contacted the Royal Oak Police. The police chief got involved, and they actually served a warrant on the bar. We got the videotape.
Great.
And it showed these guys at the front door, and they had brutalized this young boy. The kid was drunk. They kicked him out. He tried to go back in to get his coat.
Yeah.
And one of the guys, he must have weighed 400 pounds, who also had multiple warrants out for him. And this was the guy they were running security. Popped the guy multiple times, causing him to fall and fracture his skull. It's horrible. But we see these types of cases against bars. They get sued a lot, don't they?
I would say, and I've handled hundreds of those cases over the years. It's either slip and fall or it's some sort of fight. And sometimes, like I described with the pool table case, it's two groups fight, but oftentimes security is involved. And that's like you said, it's not always the case. There's no strict they don't have to have a licensure of some sort to be a security or bouncer.
Right. Anybody could do it.
Anybody
they could
can
hire
do it.
me to do it.
Big and
right?
small doesn't matter, and sometimes just the size of a person will intimidate everybody to sort of keep it cool. But some people get into that business. Some people, because they like to throw fists and
that's right.
And maybe,
it's almost like rent-a-cops too. You know,
some places
they're not screened very well. I find we have a case on the west side right now that we're litigating where they had a bouncer, a guy who had a gun.
Yeah, and
he carried a gun. Now look, if you're going to carry a gun at a crowded nightclub, you need to know how to use it, and you need to use it judiciously, right?
Yes.
And there was a fight, and the guy pulled out his gun and shot someone in the middle of a crowded bar. So bars get sued a lot. Number one, if security beats somebody up.
Right.
Number two, if other people beat other people up and the bar like created the situation or knew about it and didn't do anything.
Yeah, they've got a duty really just to call 911. So you really don't want that guy ever pulling that gun out. And really, honestly, as a bar owner, you don't even want him to have it on the premises because that can happen.
Problems will happen. And then now they're getting sued and now somebody's dead, right?
Or paralyzed.
And then we have 3, which is the dram shop laws.
Yes.
Which is a law that says if you serve alcohol to people, if they get visibly drunk, you got to stop because they could crash their car, they could hurt somebody.
And that does happen. And that's a tough case to prove, but
Very
it can
tough.
be proven. And usually it's in death cases. And it's funny it's not funny, but I had a fatality case and it was coming out of a club in Detroit. And I counted recently, I had represented 85 bars in the city of Detroit. I want to make a little map because I just put all the addresses. 85 over the years, just in Detroit, not counting rest of the states, probably double that amount. But in Detroit, there's a lot of busy. So we had a fatality come out and it was a larger individual who was the person who passed away. And the police come in and I'll never forget. And the way they write it up, it was a guy in drag. They thought it was a female. I mean, it's perverse, but they thought there's nothing wrong with being in drag, of course, but they thought it was a female and they had it written up that way. They bring them into the morgue or wherever, and we're doing we took off the
autopsy
clothes until they figured out that it was a male dressed up like a woman and not a woman. And I'll never forget that one. It was a really interesting case in the way it went down. And to our earlier point of, you got to do the discovery, you got to look at all the medicals. I had hired a company, this is 20 years ago or better. We had hired a company to do an investigation. He puts together a great investigation, the claims company that investigates this and looking into everything, what happened. So my name is David, first name, and the plaintiff's attorney's name is David, also different last name. He sends the report to the plaintiff's attorney. Has my whole case in it, and so we actually end up going to the Supreme Court up on that case, not related to that matter, but it was like I stopped using that investigation company after that.
Dude, he sent it to opposing counsel.
And it was everything I had in my quiver, every bit of information that would help me.
Yes, right? When you hire an expert, it's supposed to be
the guy can't unsee it. He
know,
gets this package. It's like, here's Draper's case.
I've done a lot of bar cases involving assaults. I did one in Birmingham, Michigan. There used to be a bar there called South.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And South would get busy at night, and it turned kind of nightclub-ish.
Yes.
And my guy was there drinking, and he went up to a famous NFL football player, and who was there with his whole posse. He was there with his whole gang of guys, and they were drinking Cristal, and they had bottle service. And my guy was drunk, and he put his arm around the football player and said, like, why don't you share, some of your stuff? Yeah. And he was drinking a cranberry and vodka, and some of it spilled on the football player. Yeah. The football player took a bottle, champagne bottle, and smashed it over my guy's head. Oh. Splintered it. And then my guy passed out, and his head was bleeding with glass in it. Then it gets worse. The bouncers from South, they're like, we got to get this guy out of here. Yeah. One of them says he's bleeding all over our floor. So they drag him out by his feet, and they throw him out the back into the alley.
Oh, my goodness.
And so we ended up suing the NFL football player, and we sued the bar. The case ended up getting resolved. But you just have crazy stuff that you can't make up.
It's funny. Birmingham has they've really toned it down, but there was a moment there where, like, from 10 p till 2 a.
It got a little crazy.
There was a lot of nightclubs like that, and they really tamped
toned
that
it
down.
way down.
Yeah, because I represented some clubs there that got shut down, and there was not, the city just was like, we're not doing that anymore.
You're done. You're gone. So tell me some of your other types of cases. Have you ever done any like strip clubs?
Yeah. So we've represented, over time, just because I've represented bars and restaurants and any place with a liquor license. So we have naturally some
And
strip
clubs have liquor licenses.
They
right?
do. And so I was thinking of, I've represented a number of those over time, less so lately, but I was thinking of one.
After COVID, I feel like the business
it's really
has
slowed down. A lot of them have complained. And the other thing is the introduction of marijuana being legal. A lot of people don't drink as much in a club that they might have before. They might smoke outside. They might smoke inside, which is a problem. So I would deal with the Vice, which is the DPD group that would
Detroit Police
cover
Department,
gambling. They would cover prostitution. They would cover strip clubs. So I got to know those guys.
Do they still have a Vice club?
Yes. But like you said, it's a different, I think it's maybe moved into different areas now.
Yeah.
But it used to be they would govern these strip clubs like crazy. So I got to know a lot of the officers.
I know this is not from personal experience.
Yeah,
this
right.
is from client accounts.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone.
Right, of course.
But that they've cracked down, like some strip clubs would have like rooms where prostitution could occur and things of that nature.
And there's ordinance now. Everything must be visible to the manager. So it used to be, there was a closed room where somebody could go.
Like the velvet rooms.
Yeah,
and stuff.
whatever, champagne room, whatever they would call it. But now everything must be visible to the manager from any point in the bar. So there cannot be any more rooms like that. So that's basically outlawed in the city of Detroit by ordinance. But I had a club that the Vice would go by there at 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, and they'd say, lights are on. What's going on here? And they would call me because I knew. They would text me, Draper, what's going on with your bar? Tell them to quit it. So I would call the owner and say, what's going on? He'd say, here's what happens. And this was when things were a little more go-go and pre-COVID.
They were making a lot of money.
Some of these places have made just ungodly amount of money, which it's good business if at different times though. Or you got an expense account. You could just open an expense account, spend $5-10 in a night, and no one would blink an eye. As long as you're making that sale of that, that steel deal to somebody or the parts deal or whatever for millions of dollars, they don't care about $10,000,
right.
20 grand, $30,000, whatever. Who cares? Go do your thing. So the place kept staying open late. I called the owner. The owner says, look, here's what happens. Guys will come in late at night, and at the close of business now they're making it rain on the big stage. And they might drop money. 20 grand, 30 grand, 50 grand at the end of the night. At the end of the night,
they would drop that much money.
Count this, and there might be 20 dancers that are splitting that money up. Now we could leave the money there, close it at 2 o'clock, and let them come back in the morning and count it up. But funny, that money will not be there the next morning at 7 a.m.
Because it's a cash business,
right? So they gotta count it right then. And I said, well, don't you have counting machines? Yeah, I got counting machines, but you count $50,000 in 20s. It takes a while,
Wow.
And then they're splitting it up, and well, you owe me from this and that, and the girls.
And then they got like the house mom.
Yeah,
right?
The house mom is the person.
Everybody gets a piece, man.
Right. Everybody gets
paid.
The DJ gets paid. The coach
security
gets something. The bartender. Everybody's on that take. So those are little mini economies of scale. Now it has, like you said, the business has gone down. Not per se in Miami or Las Vegas, or there's other places that it's still really booming and busy. I think Detroit's time has slowed down. Just because of COVID.
I think a lot of them closed. Yeah, a lot of them closed. So have you seen any crazy, have you had any crazy cases involving Vice at a strip club?
Yeah. They're always involved. I've had, more shootings than I could tell you about. And that's in any kind of downtown late at night. People are carrying guns. And we had one, I remember, and it's club. I actually really nice owner, but this is the business he's in. Real nice guy, nicest, most gentle guy, doesn't have a gun or anything like that. But like you were saying before, one of the bouncers had a gun, and this was an interesting from records case. So guy comes in and he's getting into it, a patron, and the bouncer ended up shooting him fatally and claimed that there was a reason that the
self-defense
that the customer was the aggressor or was the bad guy, and we were about to settle the case for cheap $10,000, $15,000, something like this, and there's no records. DPD cannot find video, and my guy had a video, but this was a time where it was like a VCR machine, and Detroit police came in, grabbed the machine, and took it off premises. There was no written record. There was no nothing. So it was all the word of my bouncer
that's a lot
shooter.
of bar cases. That's what happened.
So then we're about to settle. We had settled the case we had gone through mediation, again, 10, 15,000, like that. Terrible case, but according to our version, according to my clients, the bouncers, nothing had gone wrong. We weren't the aggressors. They find the video at the last minute. It's down in a basement somewhere in DPD. It's like they find the video, the machine, and all the written reports. And it turns out my guy's at fault. My shooter, my bouncer was actually, and it changed the case from a 10,000 value to a 7-figure value really quickly.
Well, that's what video will do, because look, it's like his word or her word against somebody else. We tried a case down in Wayne County against a strip club over on the west side. I think it was in Dearborn, where our guy went in. He, nice, meek guy, kind of poor guy, didn't have a lot of money, and the stripper said, "Well, I'll give you a dance." And what happened is, one dance cost, I don't know, like $50. She ended up giving him 5 dances, but doesn't tell him like this is the next dance.
And he hasn't got the money.
And he doesn't got the money.
Right. And
so she's like, "Well, that'll be $250. She's like, "I thought you said it would be $50.
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, you got 5. And so the security, and we did get some video. The security, we have it on video, picks the guy up, body slams him over a table onto the thing, holds him down by the neck, and then goes in his pockets and takes all the money that he has.
Yeah.
Then when he went outside, he got assaulted. They claimed there was no video outside, and that it never happened, and that the client was making everything up. So we go to trial, and I don't know if you know this, but on Google Maps, I got a Google map of the bar, and the owner came in and testified, shady guy. He said, "Oh, we don't have any cameras outside."
Right.
We did not at the time. Well, on Google Maps, I have a Google Maps, and it shows these cameras clearly, as clear as day, and the cameras are...
Yeah, so you can see with that image, there's definitely cameras
you can just see these big, huge cameras outside.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, those cameras are new. We didn't have them at the time.
Right.
There's a thing on Google Maps. I don't know if you knew this, but you can actually go back historically, and you can look from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever the Google car comes by and takes the pictures.
That's
so
all
I said,
saved somewhere.
Yeah, I said, well, that's really funny that you're telling us that today. Because you know what, sir? Do you see right here? You see where it says June of 2015?
Right.
You know, in Google Maps, you could go back and look. And he's just like,
Yeah.
And then we showed the jury. The cameras were there. He was lying.
Right.
But that's a problem, because without video...
Yeah.
It is just one guy's word against his. Oh, he's and things get a little dicey.
It's really changed the practice, and I know in my criminal cases for sure, there's now body cam. It can be. I've got a case up Monday morning, and it's a driving while drugged and driving while drinking alcohol case. But there's just scads of video of the arrest, of what happened back in the station, what kind of testing was done. It's really good in certain respects, but it really expands the discovery time that you must spend now,
going through all the video.
Right? Before everything was paper records. So you'd go to the courthouse, you'd find out, has that place been sued before, right? Has that person filed lawsuits before? Is there medical records? Whatever. It was all paper discovery.
Right.
Or maybe you'd have MRIs or x-rays, but it was basically paper.
But video is good for both sides.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Then it's like, all right, there's really no dispute over at least the essential of what happened physically. Like either, like in this case, they were saying, oh, the guy was never assaulted, he fell over. Yeah. Well, it can't be both. Was the guy assaulted or not? Video protects both people. If the guy fell over, then it exonerates the bar. Right. If the guy was assaulted, then it supports the guy. So
and we've had lots of cases like that where it's it could be one or the other, and it's provable.
Yeah, it's provable. So I get like casino. I get a lot of casino cases. Everything, because people like strip clubs, bars. Crazy things happen at casinos. It's a breeding ground for cases gone wild.
Yes, I've had more cases. I got one pending right now with a gal who's, again, mild-mannered when you talk to her, but got into it with a fan of another team, not the Lions, after a game.
And
they
people
go
are
to the
drinking,
casino, and then all heck breaks loose.
So whenever I have a casino case now, I say, all right, I write the casino.
Yeah.
I say, my client's saying this happened. Show us the video.
Right.
And most of the lawyers for the casino will show me the video because they know that Jon Marko, if the video shows that my client was at fault, I'll say thank you.
Yeah.
I'll go to my client, say I'm not representing you.
Right.
If it shows the casino's at fault,
different story.
We're on like Donkey Kong. But
and I like that after you practiced a while like us, you get people that you can respect like that. It's like, it's perfectly fine to share because this is going to come out eventually anyways. So we might as well shortcut it, and they know you're
Let's cut to the chase.
And you're not going to bring some BS case or try to.
I'm not going to bring a BS case. We just had a casino case. It showed our client being the aggressor.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not going to take the case.
Right.
Thank you, attorney. Tell your client
somebody
it's over.
will. And honestly, maybe not all the time, but oftentimes there's another step or a step below or a step below. Yeah. Where somebody's like, well, I'll take a flyer.
I'll take it. Yeah. That's not me. I
no,
don't like to practice
you don't need to.
So tell us about this Vice case where a stripper fell through the roof.
Like I said, I was dealing with Vice, quite often, and really they're perfectly nice men and women who are just doing a very unusual job in the city of Detroit, a very difficult job, one we wouldn't like. And so that's why I would always tease them. It's like, they can't go bust a dope house. They got to send everybody in full jackets and helmets and body armor. And they're coming into a strip club where everybody's, men generally are dressed a little nicer. The women aren't dressed particularly in a whole lot. And I
bet it's a big buzzkill to be like hanging out at the strip club. All these strippers are dating, and all of a sudden in comes like the squad.
A dozen people in all blacked out. And it's really intimidating. And of course, and it can happen in regular clubs. It can happen in strip clubs. I had one strip club. They were going on a case in the city of Detroit. And they were going to, it was like a records case. They didn't have a business license. And it was predominantly a records, maybe filing this, that, or the other. They took a tank and went in because they had a toy and they got to use it. So they went in the back of the building and busted down the back of the building.
They busted the back of the building with the tank?
And it wasn't like there was danger afoot.
Are they allowed to do that? That's crazy.
We didn't. My client declined to sue.
Okay. Well, tell him to call me.
Oftentimes with these clients, they'd rather just leave things well enough alone.
So they had to rebuild the wall?
Yeah, they had to rebuild the wall.
Oh my
God.
God.
In this other case, so I get a text late at night. With our business, the phone is always on, right?
Yeah.
So I get a text. He says, the owner says,
well, nobody's calling. The strip club beef doesn't go down at 2 in the afternoon.
No,
generally.
never. I always said when I was doing more bar work, and thank God that I'm doing today, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock on Friday night is their Monday morning. Now it's go time, right?
Yeah.
And that continues through until Sunday night, and then it's kind of dormant for a while. And from Monday 8 a.m. till Friday 8 p.m.
It's a different schedule.
Yeah, it's totally flipped from our regular
courthouse.
Right.
So what happened?
So the guy sends a video, and you see a little hallway, and you see these Vice.
So this
Vice
is at
cops,
a strip club, and they're being raided.
They're being raided, and so some of the workers at the club maybe don't have the best record. So I guess this gal had
she maybe had like a warrant or
something, or that she didn't want to interact with the law enforcement on that evening, and so she scurries up and gets up into the ceiling, but it's not made to hold a human being for very long, if at all.
So this stripper runs, and is she in all of her stripper?
Yeah, was wearing less than you wouldn't wear out in regular public on when you're going to Target.
Yeah.
So she's up there hiding in the ceiling. Here comes the officers come by, and then all of a sudden she comes crashing through, and she wasn't hurt, thank God. She comes flying out of the ceiling, and the
whole just crashes out of the
boom,
ceiling.
And she falls down, and they kept going out of scene, out of screen because they didn't know that was coming, and they're it's loud in there, the music's up, and with a little bit of oh my God, it was a great visual.
That's interesting. So tell me about now I understand that you were involved in some very high-profile cases.
It's just the way it's broken. So one of the cases in Grosse Pointe that people will know was Bob Bashara, and
So tell us about who is Bob Bashara.
So he was
and
landlord. He married to a delightful, by all accounts, woman, Jane, and and a very well-known family in Grosse Pointe Park. He owned a number of commercial real estate, maybe some residential as well, but mostly
So kind of like
commercial.
wealthy family guy.
Yeah, came from his father was a judge as well, and was very well respected in the legal community. I mean, as great a reputation as you could have.
Now was Bob Bashara a lawyer,
no,
or just like
so
businessman?
not so much. Yeah, business guy. So he owned this real property and kind of maintained that. What most of the public didn't know is he was also maintaining like a swingers lounge underneath one of his properties in Grosse Pointe Park on Mack Ave. Yes.
So wait, what's a swingers lounge?
So like people would go down there and maybe they'd bring their spouse or their girlfriend or their boyfriend, but they'd be there open to engage romantically with people other than their
So it was like a
partner.
real deal, like boogie nights
With like
swinger lounge
with devices and
swings and stuff like that.
all kinds of stuff, and maybe people could be restrained or what have you.
Okay,
It was
so
really
wait,
wild.
So it would actually go down in this thing.
Yeah, and like I don't think anybody I ever met knew that it was going on, including law
Grosse
enforcement.
Pointe is kind of a weird choice for that.
Yeah.
Like, it's like
You wouldn't
pretty
expect
tight
it.
lip, pretty like conservative.
Very conservative.
More
Yeah,
conservative.
it's a bedroom
like,
community.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a swinger bedroom community.
No,
You wouldn't think.
No, you wouldn't think.
But you'd be wrong.
Yeah,
you'd be
you're
wrong. So that
You'd
was
be wrong.
going on down there.
So this was underneath what? This swingers lounge.
So it's like at
And
Mack
can you
and
please give the
Beaconsfield.
listeners the address in case? No, I'm just kidding.
No,
I'm
it's
just
not going anymore.
All
It's
right.
a really nice restaurant's above there now, and it's been actually they had a fire. It's nothing
All right.
like that.
So
going
they
on.
converted the swingers lounge into something else now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So it's
Just a
not there.
regular old
Stop
basement.
searching for
Yeah,
it,
stop.
listeners. I know some of these. So this is Cases Gone Wild. I know
Yeah.
some of our listeners are going to just be scouring to try to figure out where this lounge is.
one
Sorry, guys. It's
Definitely, there were it's been covered in podcasts and Dateline and stuff like that.
Okay.
So Bob comes out. His wife goes missing.
So people will go down there
Yeah.
underneath the
Oh, yeah.
restaurant. Okay.
Yeah. Beneath the restaurant. But his wife had nothing to do with it. He had,
This
had
was like his
other
side job,
girlfriends.
side
Right.
hobby. place.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So he had a local mistress, and I represented his mistress from Oregon, who was called, and this was an unfortunate name, but her name was Slave J. Okay. So-
Wait, that was her legal name?
no, that was her
Okay.
name with him. So
Well,
he
how
and
did she get
her-
here from Oregon?
So he and her, they found each other on a website for like-minded individuals, and he, as an attempted out, so he wouldn't be in town, he hired a handyman, his handyman, to murder his wife, and he flew to see my client
Wait a
in
minute.
Oregon.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah,
So this guy had Slave J from
Yeah.
Oregon,
Right.
Who was his like slave mistress,
yeah,
sex
yeah,
mistress
and
or whatever.
they really were early in their relationship, and they were distant, So he flies out there as cover to say, "Well, I wasn't in town." when
Why
my
did he want to
wife got-
murder his wife so he
for
could
money,
be with
for
Slave
money?
J?
Yeah, with her, and he had another local girlfriend too.
So he didn't want to have to pay for a divorce or something.
Yeah, and his wife had a large insurance policy,
Oh my
and
god!
he was always like,
This is crazy.
oh yeah, totally crazy. So
I think this was on Dateline.
yeah, so it doesn't go down while he's at my client's place in Oregon. The handyman does not carry it out, and while he's with,
So he tries to hire his handyman,
while he's
flies
with my-
out to see
for
Slave
like
J,
an old Cadillac and a couple grand, like so inexpensive. It
and then he was
yeah.
going to tell the cops, "Oh no, I was with my."
And he's
mistress.
smarter than everybody. He was that kind of guy. He was way smarter than everybody, even though he wasn't. But that was his way. He would be able to.
So the hitman, his handyman, didn't do it. Did his
Didn't
handyman
do
go
it.
to the cops, or what happened?
Not at that time. So then Bob comes back and is like, "We got to get this job done." So he threatens the handyman, "You got to kill my wife. This is the deal. You got to do it." So according to the handyman, and we don't know the exact facts because one party's not here anymore. Well, the wife is dead, and tragically, her husband is dead, and now the handyman is in prison still.
So what
he
happened?
did complete the act.
The handyman did it.
He complained. He hit the handyman says Bashar was holding a gun to him and told him to do it, and so he did it under duress of being forced to do it. He did admittedly do it. And so for the longest time, Bob was not charged with the crime. We weren't, the law enforcement was not sure what had happened exactly. The
Did they
handyman
charge
goes in.
The handyman.
He goes into
ratted?
the police at first and says, "I did it." And they dismissed him and said, "You did not do it. You're just you're having a fabulous thought here, but you didn't really do it. So they sent him
because
away.
nobody probably could believe that Bob Bashara, right, this like
Right.
businessman in the community, would do something so crazy. The whole story's crazy.
It's so crazy. So for months they didn't
like, hey, I'm
charge him.
here. There's a sex slave business underneath
in Grosse
the
Pointe, but
Point.
that proved to be true. People, that kind of checked out. Ultimately,
So did they bring in all these swingers and?
oh
like all
everybody.
these
That was
people
all the
were
witnesses.
busted?
They brought my lady in from Oregon. She came in, and so it was
Was
a
she
real
charged?
crazy time. No, because she had nothing to do with it. In fact, she was a witness for the prosecution. So it was one of the weird times as a defense attorney where I was helping the prosecutor. I sat with Lisa Lindsay, who was the prosecutor, and the detectives in the park who did a fabulous job. Ultimately, broke the case. But here's a funny thing:
Wayne County was then prosecuting.
Kim Worthy brought the charges, and successfully they went to trial and they won the case. And
What was the defense for Bob Bashara?
He didn't do it, or it was really the handyman, and the handyman's wasn't super educated.
But he
guy.
had everything there. He had a motive.
Right.
He was going to get the money.
Right.
That's crazy.
And he would talk to the media, the husband. He would talk. So the not funny thing, but my wife will never let me forget this. She never has worked in my office, really. But one day, my regular secretary was out, and I was in court. And so I said, honey, can you come in? I had somebody coming in that day, and I just needed my wife to cover the phones and just be at the office for just a minute while I was in court. And then once I got back, she could go home and whatever. So she's in the office, and she gets a call, and I'm not back yet, is my memory. And she's like, Bob Bashara, she maybe text me or whatever. Bob Bashara is on his way to the office like right now. What do I do? And this was before he had been charged, but everybody kind of suspected that he was the murderer.
And
so
were you representing?
I was representing the Slave
J?
J, so he knew, and she would have nothing to do with him. So he knew I was the conduit.
Well, you were probably scared. Were
so
you
he's
scared
coming.
for your
Yeah, I was
wife?
scared. So, but he comes in, and my wife again will never let me forget this. But you never know what you're going to say. So he comes in, and he had lost a ton of weight since he murdered his wife. And I go, oh my God, Bob, you look great. He lost all this weight. And he's like, oh, thanks. So he comes in, we sit down and talk. Perfectly nice. He just wanted to get to my client through me.
Yeah,
he was not threatening or anything. Now, had he been in person with her, maybe he would have been. I don't know. But through
That's
me,
just crazy.
he was smart enough. My wife
So
said,
what happened to Bob?
So Bob ends up getting arrested. He's held. He goes, through every motion, everything, does everything he can. They ultimately try the case. He's convicted. He tries to have the hitman killed while the hitman's in jail. He hires another hitman to kill the hitman.
This guy's crazy.
It's completely bonkers. Like,
He just
so
thought
bonkers.
he could do whatever he wanted.
So he was convicted, I believe, on both of those for the murder of his wife and the attempted murder of the hitman who killed his wife. He hired this guy from the east side of Detroit who runs a furniture store, who was his buddy. But it was,
And so,
it was
how did Bob
crazy.
die?
He died in prison up north, like in Traverse City area.
Just of being sick or something?
Yeah. He wasn't the healthiest guy. And I remember, like, it was in the paper. He got in trouble while he was in prison for trying to make wine out of like ketchup packets and stuff. It's like a jail wine thing. And every once in a while they'd make fodder, for the news if
Wow, that is a case gone wild.
Case.
Like you couldn't write that stuff.
No.
If you told someone, they're like, I don't believe this.
You
is
wouldn't
the
pick
most...
Grosse Pointe, because it wouldn't make sense.
It's
that
just
that
crazy.
Would be here.
And
he was so open with the media and would just like welcome them in and tried to convince everyone. And he was just did a horrible job at it.
It's
and,
crazy.
And clearly the jury didn't buy it either.
So where's Slave J today?
She's in Oregon, and we don't really keep in touch. Although she was a very interesting client. It was an unusual one. I don't get a call. It was so funny. My secretary at the time, Beth, she gets the call. She's like, I knew this would come. Like, she's like, I figured it's a Grosse Pointe case. Like, you're going to be involved in some fashion. I don't know what. And it's like the woman
you're a
calls.
big deal over.
Well, I enjoy
You're
it.
the East Side guy. You're
you
the
just
big deal.
hang around long enough, and that happens. Just by inertia or by everybody falls off. But one that I think back, which wasn't, I only handled one murder case where I represented the murder, and it was terrible. And I've decided that wasn't for me. But I handled it with a guy, Corbett Edge O'Mara.
Wait,
also made a transition.
Didn't O'Mara become a federal judge?
His dad is a federal judge, and Corbett was a criminal defense lawyer and an excellent attorney. And
didn't he have an early death?
Yeah, he battled some demons, and but I'm telling you, was really helped me with when I early was transitioning from civil cases to more criminal cases. He was really helpful because he was devoted to only doing criminal defense. And so I get a call, and these are how these things happen. You know, you just get a call. I get a call from a friend, and his friend was in lockup in the city of Detroit. He just murdered his son. So
oh my gosh.
Terrible. 15-year-old son. So the 15-year-old son had allegedly molested his 2-year-old half-sister. So the dad, who was the killer, killed his son.
Mad at the son.
Right. And executed him, stripped him naked, sent him outside, put him on his knees, and shot him in the head.
Oh my God.
Terrible case. I don't have the stomach for this. I'm telling you, it was one of the only times in court. I was at the preliminary exam. We held the exam in Highland Park, is where it occurred, in Detroit, you know, in a little tiny town in Detroit. And it was, as the aunt was telling the story, because she had been there and watched it happen, it was one time where I almost was just physically ill, because it was so emotional, it was so gut-wrenching. And you and I we have to hear things, and we have to live things, and we have to counsel people, and
they're horrible things.
They're horrible things. It's the worst thing that could happen in somebody's life, and you're just there as the lawyer, and you got to carry on, and you have to be really have your wits about you and ask questions and cross-examine and do everything for that person. That was one time in my career, and I pretty much after that decided that was not the type of case that I wanted to handle. But it just so happened it caught national media attention. It was on CNN headline news. They flew me to New York. It was at the time it was on True TV. They followed the whole trial. We tried the case in front of Judge Brian Sullivan, who was a criminal judge at the time. And he always says I lost the case, and I always say I won the case because he was charged with first-degree murder, and we got second-degree murder. So at least he has an opportunity to get out of prison at some point.
And Judge Sullivan, good guy, Grosse Pointe guy. He's the head of the business division now in Wayne
judge,
County.
One of the funniest and smartest guys you'll run into.
No way. That's a crazy story. Now, you know, a lot of people ask me when people who aren't lawyers,
right?
And they always ask me, they say, so like what about defending people that you know are guilty or having to do that? Now, look, I'm a civil guy.
Right.
I'm not a criminal guy.
But it would be very similar mindset. You could slide right over. If you said tomorrow, I want to just do criminal defense, it's the same mindset. What you're saying is the people have to prove, the prosecutor has to prove a certain thing. It's really not about whether somebody's innocent or guilty to me or to any criminal defense attorney. I don't think it's about what are you hired to do? You're hired. We have a constitution in the United States of America. We have a state of Michigan constitution. This is what we must follow. Everybody's entitled to a defense, whether they did it or not. Oftentimes you're assisting someone and they're going to plead to something. That's the majority of the time.
Right.
Sometimes cases are outright dismissed, and oftentimes you do have to go to trial in criminal cases, but you're really just making sure that their rights are protected. Doesn't matter if they did it. We knew this guy did it. Everybody knew he did it. He admitted to doing it. In this murder case, it was brutal. He had the flattest affect I've ever seen, but he made a decision. He knew it would alter his life. He made the decision, carried out the act, and now is living with the consequences. He never cried. It was really eerie and really bizarre.
That is really just
and he was a postman. He was a postman before that.
So like a good working guy?
Good working guy, had no bad record at work, no criminal record, no nothing. This was a one-time thing, but it was as bad of a thing as can be done, and it was to your own child. So it was absolutely fascinating case,
tragic.
But horrible
That is
case.
So tragic. Yeah, you know, everybody has a constitutional right to a defense, and there's a reason that we do have these laws. You know, it started with the concept that, you know, the government has so much power, and to take away somebody's freedom in life is the ultimate exercise of that power. And so, you know, it started all the way back in, I think, with like Socrates, but it's followed through with, it's better to have 10 guilty people go free, as horrible as that is, than to have one innocent person
put to death or put in
or
prison
have their
for
freedom
life.
taken away.
And that's the way the system is set up. The reality is, and people, you know, they see the cases in the media. The reality is most people, if they are guilty, are going to plead to something. And if it's significant, they're going to be incarcerated.
For a long time.
Yeah. And if it's not particularly significant, if we think it's a speeding case or whatever, they're going to pay a fine and move along. But they've pled to maybe less than they're charged with, what have you. That's how the system, there's too many cases in Wayne County and Oakland County, Macomb County to try all those cases. We don't have the time.
Yeah. Most of them plead out. Most of the people plead guilty.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what
happens. Now that gives you a really good background and perspective to be a judge.
Yeah.
To balance and enforce the law and the Constitution Constitution for everybody.
I like
on
that.
both sides.
I like that. And as I was saying before, sometimes it just starts with a phone call. There was a morning, now it's almost 20 years ago, I was sitting in my office, 8 a.m., I get a call. The FBI's at my client's house. Client's very successful. He's got a chain of restaurants. He's got 100,000 square foot space where they prepare the food, where they have their offices, where they send trucks to take the food and take it to the dozen restaurants.
And the FBI's there?
FBI's at his house. He had 2 houses.
That's like the scariest thing. You wake up and the FBI's there.
He's in his pajamas.
Well, what time is it?
They came to the house at 7:30. I get the call at 8. I race over there. They let him get dressed.
How many FBI agents?
40 agents over the whole thing. They got 2 houses. They've got the 100,000 square foot place. FBI, IRS, and Customs are there.
Wait, FBI, IRS, and the Customs Department?
Yeah. So they're all there. And you want to talk intimidating. Like these people mean business. They're very good at what they do. They come in with an agenda. They've got a search warrant or some reason, some legal grounds to be there. And to take that case on was a really interesting case.
So what was the chart? Why were they at your client's
house? They were
house?
looking for, there were tax issues. That's why the IRS was there. They were concerned if there might be people, and it was right after 9/11. And this was a different time in our country's, it was a different flavor. It was a Middle Eastern client. Most of the workers were
It was
of
hard
Arabic
time.
descent.
It was a hard time to be an Arab American in the United States after 9/11. There was a lot of stuff going on. Remember, they were like following people to mosques and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Now, my client at that time, there were reasons for them to be there. They came, and I'll never forget. So he had a safe. He had a room that was a safe. So it was,
what do you mean a room that was a safe?
The money was in there. All the documents
like
were in there.
Like a bank vault?
Yeah, it was like a bank vault. So
how big was the safe?
There was big safes within the safe room, but I mean, this room was this room was locked down.
Now, could you go? Was it like a panic room? Could you go?
Yeah, you could go hide in there too. Yeah, I'm sure it would be a good place. It would be tough to get you. So we go there. The agent, there was a female agent in charge, and she was excellent. She says, "Look, we're going in there right now. You better open this up." And my guy's like, "I don't have the key." So she looks over to another agent. Get the explosives. We're going in.
They were going to blow up.
They were going to blow it open. And so he says, okay. I got the key at home. Draper, come with me. I drive him home. We get the key. We race right back, open it up. Now, they found all kinds of stuff in there.
Like what? What was in there?
A lot of cash.
How much?
$1 million plus. And I mean, to some people, I don't know. I mean, I know you've got the safe room down here, and you might have that as just chump change. But for a lot of your listeners, that's still a lot of money.
A lot of money
in 2024. That's still a lot of money. So they found a great deal of money, some documents. Needless to say, I didn't see that client after that night ever again, nor has he, and has anybody seen him? He's
gone?
He's gone, and not at my direction. It would have been a really interesting case to tackle,
So he just left the country or wherever he is.
I don't know where he is. I don't know where he is. We have had no contact, but it was an interesting one. It was a really interesting just to see how because I'd never seen that large scope of a raid take place at multiple locations. And again, I was really impressed. I think, you don't do federal work per se, but you're obviously aware of the FBI.
I do federal civil work,
right.
Just not criminal stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
but I know you're, obviously aware of and work in some capacity with those law enforcement agencies because it just becomes relevant in your cases on occasion.
Yeah.
And the just the level of professionalism. It's not to say it's not present at the state level, because it certainly is, but it's a different level. The feds, like when you go to federal court, there's usually Marko's case is up at 2:30.
Exactly.
Not 20 cases up at 2:30.
They have a lot more resources at them. So for example, if you go to federal court and have a federal judge, these federal judges are able to hire, I believe, 2 to 3 law clerks to assist them. And these law clerks are from some of the top schools across the country.
Very bright.
And they have a limited caseload.
Right.
I'm in no way denigrating, the federal judiciary, but compare that to a Wayne County state judge who gets 1 law clerk.
Right.
And they can't pay them hardly anywhere near.
And the caseload is 1,000 or better. I don't know what it is, but it's significant.
Yeah. So it's just the practical reality is, when you don't have the resources and you have to do more with less.
Right. It's a different job. It's a totally different job.
It's a different job.
Yeah, I'm really, and I'm impressed with both because both are really interesting places to practice, but they're very different.
Very different. Very different. Yeah. In federal court, 2:30 is 2:30. If you're like 1 minute late, they're going to be calling your office.
Don't come casual, come dressed correctly, right? Don't let your phone go off. And in fact, don't even bring your phone in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Right?
Then
we got a little
Wayne
basket
County,
for it here.
Like you could come in on a unicycle and, 45 minutes late. And then it's like,
no one's going to know.
Yeah.
Here he is.
Hey, Marko, there you are, buddy.
Go.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we kid. We're exaggerating. But it is different. And you just have to know. Well, okay, we got one last case quick.
Yeah.
I understand that we've had so many burial cases here on Cases Gone Wild.
Yeah.
I feel like
really
there's people coming back to life.
Yeah.
Just about every Case Has Gone Wild. Now I hear that you have a crazy
stays with
funeral case.
I'll be on my deathbed. I think I'll remember this one, and hopefully it doesn't happen to me. So I'm representing a casket company, and this gentleman, a rather large gentleman, passed away. Really great family guy by all accounts. Passed away at work. Just a physical, had an issue. Maybe he's 400 pounds, like that.
Big dude.
And so the family's of somewhat limited means, and they're religious. And so they say, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We're buying a pine box. We're buying the most inexpensive pine box. Can you just fit them in there? So it's
literally just like 5 sides of pine board.
Simple. Yeah. As simple as can be. They get him in there. It's a freezing cold day of the funeral. He's going to be buried up on top of a hill. They carry the casket to the top of the hill. They get to the top of the hill. It's freezing cold out. He busts through the bottom of the casket.
With everybody there?
With everybody there. And it was a beloved guy, really nice family. So
at
everyone's
the funeral,
there.
Everybody's there.
He's rolling down the hill. He's wearing a shroud, and the shroud just pops up.
So his naked body?
So he's naked.
His
he's
naked dead body is rolling down the hill?
He's got rigor mortis. Now the casket's broken.
Is he like hitting rocks and stuff?
Yeah, he's bouncing down. He's rolling down like it couldn't be.
Are people
more, it's
screaming?
Like a cartoon, crying. And in the depositions, we deposed half a dozen family members and other friends and people that were there. They're in tears. The family can never go to another funeral. They're mortified. Now, here's what the happy ending. I mean, the sad ending is. Ultimately, they find a metal casket. They jam him in there. He will barely fit, and he's got rigor mortis, and it's just
at the same day
there.
So they have to run to the bottom of the hill,
get
the dead guy,
recover him,
and is he like all bashed up and like his head?
It's a mess. And so they finally get him into a metal casket.
So, but he won't fit in the metal
casket. He will barely fit in. They have to make.
And is the family watching them like stuff his dead body into the metal casket?
The guy was of limited means in his lifetime. The family, trust me, the family got paid very well for that, as they should by a number of defendants paid a little bit here, a little bit there, a lot of it here, a lot of it there.
Yeah.
So I feel like it was the guy was like, I'm going out. I'm going to go out with a bang. I couldn't leave you this money in my lifetime, but here's here's some money, and it was a significant amount.
That is crazy.
It was so crazy.
There's been a lot of funeral cases.
And it's the most emotional time, right? We all know from going to funerals. I mean, not for everybody. Sometimes you're at a funeral, it's a friends,
right.
grandparent.
But it's sad.
But it's always sad. But when it really hits close like that, and then something wild happens like that. I mean, you can't, it was really, really, those were some interesting depositions.
Yeah. Well, Judge, thank you so much for being here. This was great.
Yeah, great.
This was so interesting. We're so happy to have you here as a judge in Grosse Pointe. And I know you'll do a great job for the citizens. I know that you already are. And thanks for coming on Cases Gone Wild.
Thanks, John. See you.
Thank you, everybody, for another amazing episode of Cases Gone Wild. Please, if you or someone you know needs legal help, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I am Jon Marko. My law firm is Marko Law. You can reach us online, www.markolaw.com, or give us a call, 313-777-7-LAW. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Audible, YouTube, anything else. There's hundreds of ways to contact us. Until next time, we'll see you in 2 weeks for another Cases Gone Wild.